Okay, so you want to own a mobile app. Millions of users, notifications lighting up phones everywhere. Revenue rolling in while you sleep. 5-star reviews, App Store featuring, maybe a TechCrunch article. You built something once and now it just runs. Sounds like the perfect modern business. And honestly, from the outside, it really does look that way. But here is what people who actually own successful apps know, and what most people selling app development courses never tell you. A mobile app is not a product you launch and forget. It is a continuous software engineering operation that happens to live on someone else's hardware, governed by rules you do not control, competing for attention in the most saturated digital marketplace ever created. The economics are real. The risks are real, in ways that most people never see coming. Let's start at the beginning. When people say mobile app, they are usually picturing one thing: an iOS app in the Apple App Store that does something useful or entertaining. Maybe a productivity tool, a game, a marketplace, a social platform, or a service that connects to something in the physical world. You download it. You use it. Maybe you pay for it, or maybe you see some ads, or maybe you subscribe to unlock premium features. That is the consumer-facing version. But behind that simple experience is a technology stack most people never think about. Your app is not just the code that runs on the phone. It is also the backend servers that store user data, the databases that track everything, the APIs that connect to payment processors and third-party services, the content delivery networks that serve images and videos, the analytics systems tracking user behavior, the push notification infrastructure, and the authentication systems managing logins. And all of that has to work perfectly simultaneously across two completely different operating systems, iOS and Android, running on thousands of different device models across dozens of OS versions in dozens of countries 24 hours a day, every single day. This is not a website you upload to a server once. This is a distributed software system that has to be maintained, updated, monitored, and defended against security threats in perpetuity. The entire business model is built on continuous operation, not one-time deployment. Here is something that surprises people when they first look at this industry. As of 2025, there are approximately 1.96 million apps available in the Apple App Store and 2.87 million in the Google Play Store. That is 4.83 million apps competing for attention. The average smartphone user in the United States has between 80 and 90 apps installed on their device. But they actively use only about 9 to 10 apps per day. And roughly 80% of their app usage time goes to just 3 apps, usually social media, messaging, and video. What that means is this: you are not competing against other apps in your category. You are competing against Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and iMessage for seconds of attention from people who have already decided how they spend their phone time. About 90% of apps are free to download. Less than 0.5% of all apps account for roughly 90% of all app revenue. The median app generates less than $1,000 per month in total revenue. Not profit, revenue. This is the baseline reality. The market is not fairly distributed. It is a power law curve where the top fraction of apps capture almost everything, and everyone else fights for scraps. Before you write a single line of code, you need to decide what you are actually building. And this decision determines everything that comes after it. Are you building a native app, written specifically for iOS using Swift and for Android using Kotlin? That gives you the best performance and access to all device features. But it means building and maintaining two completely separate code bases. Every feature you add twice. Every bug you fix twice. Or are you building a cross-platform app using a framework like React Native or Flutter that lets you write one code base that compiles to both iOS and Android, cutting development time and cost roughly in half? But you sacrifice some performance, and you are always one step removed from the latest platform features. When Apple releases a new API, you have to wait for React Native to support it. Or are you building a progressive web app, essentially a mobile-optimized website that behaves like an app? That is the cheapest option, but you cannot access most device hardware, you cannot send push notifications properly, and you are not in the App Store, which means discoverability is basically zero. The typical first-time app owner chooses the cross-platform route because the cost difference is impossible to ignore. A professionally built native app for both iOS and Android, something moderately complex with user accounts, payment processing, real-time features, and polished UI. Costs somewhere between $75,000 and $200,000 to develop properly. That is the all-in cost working with a reputable development agency for 4 to 9 months. A cross-platform version of the same app, built with React Native or Flutter, runs between $40,000 and $100,000. You are cutting the timeline and cost roughly in half. That difference is why roughly 42% of developers now use cross-platform frameworks. But here is what that upfront development cost does not include. Backend infrastructure. Your app is useless without servers. If users create accounts, post content, make purchases, send messages, or do anything that involves data persistence, you need a backend. That means cloud hosting on AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure. It means databases, storage buckets, server-side logic, authentication systems, and API endpoints. You can build a custom backend, which gives you total control but adds another $20,000 to $60,000 to your development budget. Or you can use a backend as a service platform like Firebase, Supabase, or AWS Amplify, which cuts the initial cost dramatically but locks you into a pricing model that scales with your usage. More users means exponentially higher monthly bills. Let's say you go the practical route. Cross-platform app, $60,000. Firebase backend, $8,000 for initial setup and integration. Design and user experience work, $12,000. That is $80,000 before the app has a single real user. Now comes the part most people forget entirely. Launching an app is not like launching a website. You do not just upload files and flip a switch. You submit your app to Apple and Google for review. Apple's review process takes anywhere from 24 hours to 2 weeks. They test your app, check it against hundreds of guidelines, and reject it if anything violates their rules. And their rules are subjective, inconsistently enforced, and constantly changing. Google's review is faster but equally opaque. Both platforms can reject your app for vague reasons. Metadata issues, content policy violations, functionality problems. Every rejection means fixing the issue, resubmitting, and waiting again. The experienced app owners budget 2 to 4 weeks just for the approval process, and they plan for at least one rejection and resubmission. Once you are live, the expenses do not stop. They accelerate. Let's talk about what it actually costs to keep an app running. Cloud hosting and backend services. If you are on Firebase and you have 10,000 active users, you might pay $150 to $400 per month depending on database reads, storage, and authentication volume. At 100,000 users, that bill can jump to $1,500 to $5,000 per month. At scale, backend costs do not grow linearly. They grow exponentially because database queries, API calls, and file storage compound with every new user. Push notifications. Services like OneSignal or Firebase Cloud Messaging charge based on volume. Free tiers cover small usage, but once you are sending hundreds of thousands of notifications per month, you are paying $200 to $500 monthly. Third-party APIs and services. Payment processing through Stripe or PayPal, 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. Analytics through Mixpanel or Amplitude, $0 to $2,000 per month depending on event volume. Customer support tools like Intercom or Zendesk, $75 to $400 per month. Email services for transactional emails, $50 to $300 per month. Crash reporting and monitoring through Sentry or Bugsnag, $30 to $500 per month. Apple and Google take their cut before you see a dollar. Apple charges $99 per year for a developer account. Google charges $25 one time. But more importantly, both platforms take 30% of every dollar you earn through in-app purchases or subscriptions in the first year, dropping to 15% after year 1 for subscriptions. If you are selling a $9.99 monthly subscription, you get $6.99. Apple keeps $3. That is before payment processing fees, before your server costs, before anything else. Then there is the cost that catches everyone off guard. Ongoing development and maintenance. Your app is never done. iOS releases a major update every September. Android releases multiple updates per year. Each update can break things in your app. APIs get deprecated. UI components change. Security requirements get stricter. You need to update your app 3 to 6 times per year minimum just to stay compatible and secure. Each update means development work, testing across devices, and resubmission to the app stores. Industry data suggests that maintenance and updates consume between 15% and 20% of the original development cost annually. On an app that cost $80,000 to build, that is $12,000 to $16,000 per year just keeping it functional. And that assumes nothing major changes. If Apple releases a new design language and users expect your app to match it, you are looking at a UI overhaul that can cost $15,000 to $40,000. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood aspects of app economics: how apps actually make money. There are 4 primary revenue models, and each one has completely different unit economics. Model 1, paid download. You charge $2.99 for $0.99 or $9.99 upfront. The user pays once, owns the app forever. This model is nearly dead. Less than 5% of apps use it now because users have been trained to expect free. The apps that still charge upfront are mostly professional tools, utilities, or games with cult followings. The revenue is immediate but capped. You get 1 payment per user, ever. Model 2, freemium with in-app purchases. The app is free to download. Users can pay to unlock features, remove ads, buy virtual goods, or access premium content. This is the dominant model. Roughly 98% of App Store revenue comes from in-app purchases. The challenge is conversion rates. Across the industry, only about 2% to 5% of free users ever pay for anything. If your app has 10,000 downloads, you might have 200 to 500 paying customers. Model 3, subscription. Users pay monthly or yearly for ongoing access to premium features or content. This is the model every app owner wants because it is recurring revenue. A user who subscribes at $9.99 per month and stays for 18 months is worth $179.82 in gross revenue, minus the 30% platform cut, so $125.87 to you. The problem is churn. The average mobile app subscription has a monthly churn rate between 5% and 10%. That means you lose 5% to 10% of your subscribers every single month unless you are constantly replacing them with new ones. Model 4, advertising. The app is free and you show ads. Revenue comes from impressions or clicks. A typical ad-supported app earns between 50 cents and $5 per user per month depending on the ad format and user engagement. To make $10,000 per month from ads alone, you need somewhere between 2,000 and 20,000 highly active users. And ad networks like AdMob take 30% to 40% of the ad revenue as their cut. Here is the mathematics that determines whether your app business works or fails. Customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value. CAC versus LTV. Let's say you are running a subscription app. Your subscription is $9.99 per month. After Apple's 30% cut, you get $6.99 per subscriber per month. Your average subscriber stays for 8 months before canceling. That means the lifetime value, the total revenue you collect from one subscriber, is $6.99 times 8, which equals $55.92. Now, how much does it cost to acquire that subscriber? If you are relying on organic App Store search, your CAC might be close to 0, but your growth will be painfully slow. If you are running paid ads on Facebook, Instagram, Google, or TikTok to drive installs, your CAC in 2025 is somewhere between $3 and $15 just to get someone to install the app. But installation is not subscription. Only about 10% to 25% of people who install a free app will even open it more than once. Of those who do, only 2% to 5% convert to paying subscribers. So if you spend $5,000 on ads and get 1,000 installs, maybe 200 people use the app seriously, and maybe 10 of them subscribe. That is $5,000 spent to acquire 10 subscribers. Your CAC is $500 per subscriber. Your LTV is $55.92. You just lost $444.08 per customer. That is not a business. That is buying customers at a 90% loss. The apps that survive this equation do one of three things. They have exceptionally high retention, 18+ month average subscription length, pushing LTV up to $125 plus. They have virality built into the product, so organic referrals keep CAC near zero. Or they have a different monetization model entirely, where LTV is measured in hundreds of dollars, not tens. Let me show you a real example. Calm, the meditation app, reported over 100 million downloads and more than 4 million paying subscribers at its peak in 2021. The company was valued at $2 billion. Sounds like a massive success. And in many ways it was. But here is what happened next. By 2023, Calm laid off 20% of its staff. Revenue growth stalled. The company admitted that customer acquisition costs had risen so high that growth was no longer profitable. The market was saturated. Competitors like Headspace, Insight Timer, and 100 smaller apps were all bidding for the same users on the same ad platforms, driving CAC through the roof. The business model that worked when CAC was $15 and LTV was $80 collapsed when CAC hit $60 and LTV stayed flat. The unit economics inverted. And when that happens in a subscription business, you cannot fix it by working harder. You have to completely rethink the model or shrink. Here is the operational reality that nobody tells you. Running an app is not like running a SaaS business where you control the platform. You are building on someone else's infrastructure, and they change the rules whenever they want. In 2020, Apple announced App Tracking Transparency, a privacy feature that required apps to ask permission before tracking users across other apps and websites. Sounds reasonable, but it destroyed the mobile advertising industry overnight. Before ATT, Facebook's ad platform could track whether someone saw an ad, installed your app, and eventually subscribed. After ATT, roughly 75% of iOS users opted out of tracking. That means ad platforms lost the ability to measure conversions accurately, which means their algorithms got worse at targeting, which means CAC went up by 30% to 60% for most apps almost immediately. Apps that were barely profitable became unprofitable. Apps that were growing fast hit a wall. You did not do anything wrong. Apple changed one policy, and your entire acquisition strategy fell apart. Here is another risk: platform dependency. In 2023, Apple updated its App Store guidelines to crack down on apps that used manipulative design patterns to push users into subscriptions. Apps that auto-enrolled users in trials without clear opt-out. Apps that hid cancellation buttons. Apps that charged immediately instead of after a trial period. All things that had been quietly tolerated for years. Thousands of apps got warnings. Hundreds were removed from the App Store entirely. Revenue disappeared overnight. Some companies lost 40% to 60% of their subscriber base when they were forced to change their onboarding flows to be more transparent. Those companies were not breaking laws. They were following the norms of the industry, until Apple decided the norms were unacceptable. You do not own the App Store. You do not own the relationship with your users. You are renting space in someone else's ecosystem, and the landlord can rewrite your lease at any time. Let's talk about competition, because the mobile app market is the most brutally competitive consumer space in existence. If you build a to-do list app, you are competing against Todoist, Any.do, Microsoft To Do, Google Tasks, Apple Reminders, Notion, TickTick, and 5,000 others. If you build a fitness app, you are competing against Nike Training Club, Peloton, Apple Fitness Plus, Strava, MyFitnessPal, Fitbod, and thousands more. If you build a finance app, you are up against Mint, Inab, Rocket Money, Credit Karma, and every bank's native app. Your competitors are not just other startups. They are billion-dollar companies with teams of 50 to 500 engineers, designers, and product managers. They have brand recognition. They have millions of existing users. They have App Store featuring relationships. They have marketing budgets that exceed your entire development cost. The strategy that works for independent app owners is not to compete head-to-head. It is to find a micro-niche that the big players ignore because it is too small for them to care about. A specific workflow, a specific profession, a specific community. You are not building the next Instagram. You are building the tool that solves one problem exceptionally well for 5,000 people who are willing to pay $15 a month because nothing else does exactly what you do. That is a $900,000 annual revenue business at 5,000 subscribers. After platform fees, $630,000. After hosting, tooling, and maintenance, maybe $580,000. After part-time developer support, customer service, and marketing, maybe $420,000 in operating profit. That is a real business for 1 or 2 people. It is not venture scale. It will never be featured in TechCrunch. But it works. The apps that fail are the ones that try to be everything to everyone and end up being nothing to anyone. Let's run the numbers 2 ways. Best case scenario. You build a focused productivity app for a specific professional niche. Development costs $65,000. You launch with a strong beta community of 200 early adopters who love it. You price at $7.99 per month. Organic word of mouth in your niche brings 50 to 100 new installs per month. Conversion rate from free trial to paid is 12%, much higher than average because you are solving a painful, specific problem. Within 12 months, you have 850 paying subscribers. Monthly recurring revenue is $6,791. After Apple's cut, $4,754. Annual revenue, $57,048. Your costs, backend hosting $200 per month, tools and services $150 per month, part-time developer for updates $1,500 per month, so $1,850 per month total, or $22,200 annually. Operating profit in year 1, $34,848. Not enough to quit your job, but enough to reinvest in growth. By year 3, with steady growth and low churn, you are at 2,400 subscribers, $136,000 in annual profit. You have built a sustainable micro-business that funds itself and grows steadily. Realistic scenario. You build a general-purpose app in a crowded category. Development costs $80,000. You launch to your personal network, get 1,200 installs in the first month. Conversion rate to paid is 2.5%. You have 30 paying subscribers at $9.99 per month. Monthly revenue after platform fees, $210. You try paid ads. You spend $2,000 and get 400 installs, 10 of which convert. You just spent $2,000 to gain $70 in monthly revenue. CAC is $200. LTV is maybe $56. The math does not work. Growth stalls. Backend costs are $180 per month. You are losing money every month. By month 6, you have 140 subscribers, $980 per month revenue after fees. You are break-even on hosting, but you still owe the developer who built it, and you have not paid yourself $1. By month 12, churn has eaten half your subscribers. You shut it down. You are out $80,000 and 18 months of nights and weekends. The difference between those 2 outcomes is not effort. Both founders worked just as hard. The global mobile app market is projected to generate over $935 billion in revenue in 2025. There are real fortunes being made. Companies like Duolingo, Spotify, Tinder, and Headspace built massive businesses on mobile apps. But those are the 0.01%. The vast majority of the 4.8 million apps in existence generate less than $500 per month. The people who succeed in this business are not the ones with the best idea. They are the ones who understand CAC, LTV, churn, platform risk, and niche positioning before they write a single line of code. The people who lose money, and there are many, are the ones who believe the myth that apps are passive income. That you build once and earn forever. That downloads equal success. That if you just get featured by Apple, everything will work out. Your app does not run itself. The code needs constant updates. The servers need monitoring. The users need support. The App Store algorithm needs feeding with updates and engagement signals. Competition never sleeps. The app might deliver the service automatically, but it does not run the business.